if I had to put on a scale of like 1 to 10, my confidence in the Bills being able to win football games with Case Keenum, I feel like I'm at like a 3.5. Like if they win, it's going to be ugly, close, defensive wins, in my opinion, where maybe the offense is able to put together a couple of drives, similar to really what the Jets did against the Bills, and just limiting teams from scoring 20 points. That's the path with Case Keenum, in my opinion.
But I don't necessarily know that they're elite to the point where if the Bills are starting Case Keenum this week, it doesn't automatically mean the Bills are going to lose.
The Vikings secondary seems to be the place where you can, have the most success attacking them. Their front is the strength of that defense.
Yeah.
So if you're in a matchup with Case Keenum at the helm and you're thinking, well, we're going to have to run it more to kind of hide him, and certainly Keenum has maybe not as comfortable under pressure as Allen. So I don't love the fact that we're going to have to deal with Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter if Case Keenum is the one back there.
I'm a little interested to see how Dorsey calls a game with Case Keenum versus Josh Allen as well. Some of the stuff you're saying, Chris, I see a path for the Bills to have production on offense with getting the ball out fast, getting your speed players, which we have a ton of with Cook and Hines and Shakir and even Isaiah McKenzie, who I'm down on, getting them involved in a screen game. Like getting the ball out of Case Keenum's hand quick so that line doesn't have the ability to impact the game in the similar way that Zach Wilson was getting the ball out quick, right? That's the path to beat the Buffalo Bills, to get the ball out quick slant, stuff like that. They're 31st in the NFL according to DVOA against number 1 wide receivers. I would feed Diggs often. I'd get him 13 targets in this game and just try to get the ball to him fast and get your playmakers to make plays. Like Keenum's not going to break down the pocket and make plays on his own. So I'm interested to see how Dorsey is able to manufacture touches for his playmakers in this game. What's up, Eric?
What's going on, guys? I wanted to chime in on that because you make a great point. I'm sitting here watching some of the film of Keenum right now from the Broncos game, and it was obviously a really good game for him in the preseason. And that's really all we have to go off of and on what we saw at training camp. But what I started to notice going back and watching that is, like you said, getting others involved and the way that Dorsey called the game. I mean, early in that game for him, when he came in after Josh Allen, they ran that deep play action pass to Diggs, deep play action pass to Davis. They were running. They got the outside zone running game going with Cook. They hit Cook on those checkdowns. They hit Shakir. I mean, think about it. Backup quarterbacks work with those depth receivers more than, the starters more times than not, throughout training camp, throughout the week, once the season starts. So it'll be interesting to see how not only Dorsey calls it, but how Keenum gets, different guys involved that maybe haven't been getting involved as much as we wanted to. And so maybe, again, I know a lot of people say maybe this is a blessing in disguise if Keenum does get to go a game or two and, we can get some of that running game going. I agree with all that. And I mean, that's the silver lining at the very least, but it will be interesting to see how Dorsey does call it and how Keenum does spread the ball around, because he is more of that point guard type where he just wants to get the ball out, as Aaron said, get the ball out quickly, use some of that run game, use some of those play action passes, the RPO game, quick game. So stuff like that maybe over the last couple of weeks has gotten a little stagnant with Allen, in the lineup. So if Allen doesn't go, I am interested to see how Keenum does disperse the ball to the Bills' weapons, because they do have weapons. They've been struggling the last couple of weeks, but getting those guys involved, getting their confidence back up will go a long way.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know if you can speak to this, Eric, it seems like it's hard to toss criticism towards Josh sometimes, but over the last 6 quarters or more, it seems a lot of the times he hasn't been taking what's available and trying to force things and forcing the ball to Diggs, things like that. Do you think, again, I don't think there's any blessing in disguise of Case Keenum playing football, but in terms of getting this offense back into a rhythm and putting it on film of getting the ball out to Cook, getting the ball out to the guys and letting them make the plays, do you think there's a potential to see more of that? And then also I want to get, before you have to run, because I know you split here on us at some point, my biggest concern with Case Keenum, especially against this Vikings defensive line, is I see a general lack of pocket awareness and his ability to sense pressure. Is that just going to be a problem as long as Case Keenum's taking snaps for the Bills?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the escapability of Josh Allen, so that could be an issue, especially with the Vikings and their ability to pressure guys with pressure quarterbacks with 4 and 5. Obviously, Zadarius Smith is a freaking monster in himself. Then you got Hunter coming.
Seriously.
So yeah, it's going to be a different animal, obviously, with Keenum in there. He just doesn't have that. He's got that scrappy attitude though. So he's the same type of guy where if he's escaping the pocket and getting 4 yards on a scramble, he takes a big hit, he's going to react in the same way that Josh would. So he does have that scrappiness to him. But when, like you said, when he's in, Dorsey does have to call a different game. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a tough up front because the Bills' offensive line, while they're super athletic across the board, teams that run a lot of stunts with 4 and 5 guys, it gets those offensive linemen on different levels. And so how well Keenum can manipulate the pocket will be incredibly important to watch in this game because, again, the Vikings can bring that pressure, and they like to sit in those too high looks. So can Keenum find a spot in the pocket to get rid of the ball in that short to intermediate range and just let his guys do the work instead of him having to carry the burden of the offense like Josh Allen typically does? That's something that you got to keep an eye out for.
I want to turn over here to Joe DeRosa because honestly, Joe's a fantastic. Every time he's been in the spaces, he brings up fantastic points. But real quick before I do that, Eric, I got in just talking about this, sort of one more question because we haven't seen Josh not take snaps for the Bills in a while. Depth of routes and stuff like that versus how they usually are doing it for Josh Allen. I know we've talked about how Dable was doing in the past, where some of the routes typically in the EP system, they kind of increase the depth for Josh Allen. Do you see running different style of routes or bringing that depth in a little bit for Case Keenum, or is everybody going to do it how they've done it in preparation to have Josh Allen as a quarterback, and Case just needs to play within the system as it was for Josh Allen? Things like
well, that. Josh Allen, typically his sweet spot is that intermediate area, that 10 to 19 yard range, which he struggled with this season for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he struggled with it. And the last couple of weeks, his depth of target has expanded down the field because it's almost like a lot of fans have been saying, like, it's either a shot call or it's Josh Allen scrambling. So it's like all or nothing. And there was no gray area like we saw where he could attack underneath and he could attack the intermediate area earlier in the year. There were a lot of those timing routes for whatever reason weren't there. So I think with Keenum, you're not going to have to change the entire offense, but you're going to change where that quarterback's eyes begin a route combination. If you have a 3-man route combination, Josh Allen, he wants to read high to low. When you have a guy like Keenum, you're going to have him reading low to high. All right. So it's not necessarily changing the depth, of the offense and where Keenum is targeting. It's just where his eyes begin. So the progression is just different because, when Josh Allen's in there, of course you want him, swinging for the fences because he can on any given play. But then once those defenses started, respecting that deep stuff, playing that quarters coverage like you saw the Jets do in that game, Josh Allen wasn't taking that underneath stuff. He was scared to throw over the middle at times because he wasn't seeing the field as well as he had been in prior games. So Keenum, I think it's going to be a little slower. It's going to be, read low to high. And he more than likely, if he's not frazzled to start the game, it's one of the first times he started in a little while. I think he will take that stuff underneath and in a way dictate and get back to the fundamentals when it comes to this offense because it's something the Bills need. Again, use that short stuff, use the run game, use some of the gadget stuff, use some of the screens, get some of that stuff involved to make that defense respect, and then you can go from there and get those calculated shot calls, not the calls on every given play where Josh is reading high to low.
Let's check in with the guys at Cover One Football Weekly. Here's Anthony Prohaska, Kendall Mursky, and Russell Brown to give you their thoughts on the Vikings.
I feel like every year we have this conversation with the Minnesota Vikings in a variety of ways, but they got a new coaching staff, a new scheme. They're using players in different ways, a variety of things. Russell, start with you. Are the Minnesota Vikings for real?
Yeah, I think so. Kirk Cousins seems to be relatively comfortable in this offense. But no, Dalvin Cook, if he's healthy, you see how dominant he is. We already know Justin Jefferson, one of the probably 3 best receivers in the National Football League. Jordan Hicks in the middle of that defense, Eric Kendricks, those guys those guys bang at linebackers, man. And they've got Harrison Smith still back there. Zadarius Smith, who they've added. He's been kind of that presence off the edge with Daniil Hunter.
Like, this offense is very, very legit. And if they can put up points, if they can put up like upper 20s, lower 30s, or above whatever, they're always going to be in games, and it's going to come down to that defense to kind of keep them ahead in those games. Because, I mean, you look on offense, the playmakers, like Irv Smith coming into the fold is massive.
Kind of unfair.
Giving another passing attack or option in that passing attack on top of Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne.
On top of a really good running game with Dalvin Cook. They have a sick run game.
Darrisaw's coming into their own. They just drafted Ed Ingram. Obviously, this is a passing league. You have to be able to stop the pass. They have the pass rush up front, but do they have the horses on the back end to keep everything, top down?
That's what I wonder. Like, how does this back end hold up? Because, exactly like Russ mentioned, Kendricks has legitimately been one of the best linebackers in football. Yeah, what can they be on the back end? Like, how close to all-pro Harrison Smith is Harrison Smith right now, and can he be? How much is left in the tank for Patrick Peterson, or the ghost or the shell of Patrick Peterson? All you have to do is just find a way to get some turnovers or create some negative plays. This Vikings offense regularly should put up close to 30 every week.
Catch Cover One Football weekly on Sunday nights at 7:15. To stay on top of all the biggest storylines from around the NFL, head over to Cover One YouTube, Sunday, 7:15 p.m.
Yeah, I love it. Joe, what's happening, brother? Sorry for keeping you on hold there. What's happening, man?
With Case Keenum, and this is kind of my concern, you have to, you don't really get that luxury of, well, we can do underneath stuff, because we know the second we don't do that, Allen could exploit our deep shot, take out the secondary because they have such good vertical threats. But with Keenum, it's more like, all right, well, it's Case Keenum. The same way Bills fans view the rest of the league when we play them, as far as like who their receivers are, who their quarterback is, they don't really have the same respect for Keenum that they will for Allen. And it's not to, throw any slights at Case Keenum, but the defense now can kind of just be like, all right, well, like you said, low to high. We're going to keep the pressure up front and force Keenum to test us deep, because his arm isn't as good and he doesn't have as good deep ball range. So
we've heard a lot about Diggs's return, Diggs's revenge game and Keenum's potential revenge game. There hasn't been as much talk, I feel like, about the matchup between Dalvin Cook and James Cook. And I feel like this is we keep talking about Cook, and he has been getting more involved. It's been pretty exciting to watch. I think that this is one of those games, especially if Keenum's in there, they could really lean on guys like Cook and Hines. Like someone brought it up before, and even Singletary coming out of the backfield. It would be interesting to see, them lean into that Dalvin versus James matchup.
For sure. My concern about Cook, I like the way they're using him early and often last week, and the ramp up of perceived production or opportunities at production for him. My worry is at some point, I think Hines takes that over and takes over that role. And we saw that it was, McDermott had talked about communication sort of not being there, language of the offense. And so maybe that doesn't take hold this week, and we get what you're saying. But my concern of getting excited about Cook is that I do think Hines is going to take over that role, and maybe even lean into Devin Singletary's a little bit too.
Yeah, I just think I think that they're going to get Hines involved, but I don't think it's going to mean we're going to stop seeing Cook. I think all three of those guys are going to get their run.
Well, thanks, guys. Make sure you're following everybody at Cover One, as always. Heading over to the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed there. Dave Tilton, Tilt Money, who was in here.
Thanks for joining, Dave.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Make sure you're following the Air Raid guys and following their show, the pregame show, the best out there, hour before kickoff. You want to be on that. So make sure you're following all of us, and we appreciate all the support you guys give us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.